Greetings, Gothamites, and welcome to episode 79 of I Am the Night. We'll be looking at season 2, episode 20, the final episode of the season of Batman, the animated series, and this one's called Batgirl Returns. With me, as always, is someone who's not a sidekick, but every hero that the world deserves, Adam Ray. We're back!
We have returned. We are back on the mean streets of Gotham trying to bring our own brand of audio justice. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. And yeah, you're very right there. I in this dynamic, sure, I may be sidekick-like, but a hero in my own right, much like the main characters in this episode. That was one of the main takeaways I sort of had from this. We showed off that with very little Batman, Robin and Batgirl were big damn heroes just on their own right and handled the very tricky situation that was going on in this week's episode.
Oh, yes. And, of course, multiple guest stars, one in particular who's in the action every bit as much as Dick and Babs, but we'll talk about that. So it's, Batgirl Returns, written by Michael Reeves and Bryn Stevens and directed beautifully by Dan Reber. Do you reckon that this one is up there in terms of how it's directed and the acting quality? This one's really good, I think.
This one's really good. I would agree, definitely. There's been very few weak episodes of the show overall. I'd say this is a very good character piece. It's a very good exploration of the main masked figures that are in the focus in this episode, as well as sort of the themes of like trust and understanding and what it means to be someone like this in this world of masked do-gooder types, to quote one of the other characters.
Absolutely. Well, we see a few characters here, and what blew my mind is, well, it starts with the theft of a jade cat, a priceless Han Dynasty jade cat. And as soon as I thought that, I said, well, this has got to be Catwoman, right? But I was wrong. And then we get this weird thing with Batman getting beaten down by Joker, Two-Face, and Penguin, and getting saved by Batgirl. I'm thinking, this ain't right. But of course, she was dreaming. But what do you make of the dream? The dream,
I think it was a little bit of hero worship into very noir, grandiose, sort of like, oh, my hero, but like somewhat reversed, like putting Batman as the damsel as a framing you'll never expect.
Yes.
So that was a nice little fun play on dynamics. But I want to jump backwards just a little second.
Yeah, go for it.
When I saw the cat statue being taken out, I immediately knew that it wasn't Catwoman. It was far too obvious, but also looking back at the scene, it was very clearly a much more bulky male figure. And another thing that like solidified it for me, I think Catwoman would be very respectful of a cat depiction and B, a statue of that age. This person just like grabbed it by the neck and just hucked it. I think Catwoman would be very delicate, hold it gently, maybe even pet it a little bit as though it were a real cat. So I knew almost immediately that it wasn't her. I had more faith in my discover. Yeah.
As we discover later in the episode, absolutely right. There's a lot more care and attention there, and we do find out who the real culprit is. But what blew my mind is, as far as I could tell, even though they only had a groan of pain or a wince of displeasure, it sounds like Penguin, Joker, and Two-Face were voiced by their usual actor. I mean, for Mark Hamill to appear for half a second just to go, wow.
It adds to the sincerity of the dream. It adds to how well Batgirl Barbara Gordon knows these figures from the Rogues Gallery of Batman, that she knows what their being punched in the face noises sound like. It also adds just to like the quality of the casting that we have, that they can be okay to have a bit part of a few seconds of being like, ooh, and then falling down. Yeah. Whereas like they can take an entire episode just to themselves. They've been able to handle some of the finest talent in voice acting in this show, and we really get that on show here.
Oh yeah. I mean, Adrienne Barbeau's Catwoman, Melissa Gilbert's Batgirl, Lauren Lester's Robin, all shine in this issue. And for the few lines we get from Kevin Conroy, well, what else need be said? And we'll talk more about Mr. Conroy at the end of the episode, because obviously this is God, it's hit me already. This is the first one we're recording since his untimely passing, but I'm not going to go into that because I ugly cry, and I don't want to do that on a podcast that people are going to see moving forward. So, the three leads, superb.
Truly, they brought the level of performing quality and acting chops that we can expect from them in every episode. There's never a time when they've given roughshod, half-baked performance. They've always put in maximum effort, and it shows dividends every single time.
Oh, yes. I mean, the fact in this episode, I know that the first three, Joker, Penguin, and Two-Face, are only cameos, but we get Catwoman, we get Batgirl, we get Robin, we get the return of Roland Daggett.
Which is a very nice surprise.
Lovely. And again, Ed Asner on top form as always. That was brilliant because we get so many red herrings with the stacked deck being the bar where all the villains hang out. And that's the name of one of the most famous greatest Joker stories ever told collections, that very rare leather-bound hardback, which I'm very lucky to own a copy of. Ooh. And things like that. So I thought, hang on, so it's not Catwoman. Is it Joker? Is it another red herring? But brilliant. And we meet, for the first and last time, a villain called the Chemist, and even though he was in it for like seconds and has about 2 lines, another brilliant piece of voice casting, I think.
Yeah, he has that sort of snivelly, intellectual type. This is a nod to another set of characters that I love, and I know that you love. He's very much of a Starscream type of just like being nefarious in the shadows, but like, oh no, don't hurt me when he's confronted. Oh, yes. It's kind of bad that I've always loved Starscream as a character. I sort of
great.
I sort of empathize with them, but this character sort of had that down in spades.
Absolutely, and the fact that we see Catwoman on the side of the angels as well, foreshadowing her future. I mean, you review Catwoman every month. You know that she's more an anti-hero now and fighting desperately to be on the side of good. So did you enjoy that aspect of this episode?
It was very nice to see it. I feel at this point, after reviewing Catwoman for, it's been multiple years at this point, since Joelle Jones
took over 50 issues.
Yeah, since Joelle took over the title back when they called off the wedding. Yes, I feel like I've grown to know and love this character a great deal. She's very complex, a lot more complex than most people think. A lot of people just immediately think of Michelle Pfeiffer and just like the DC's greatest thief. That's a term I like to throw around just to describe her because I love it. It's perfect. But yeah, there's a lot of complexity to her, there's a lot of richness to her, and this episode's done its best to still keep to that greatest thief in DC's sort of reputation, but show her as having a good reason and a reason to team up with the good guys.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, chaos ensues, and even though Batman is not a factor in this episode, apart from that dream cameo at the beginning, it's only Bruce Wayne we see in Paris. It felt more like an episode of The Brave and the Bold in a way, and
almost.
with Dick thrown in. Obviously, the two ladies are the main leads, but Dick's thrown in. It's like The Brave, the Bold, and the Bewildered, because he didn't know what was going on with those two, did he?
No, he was. Obviously, of course, there are times when Bruce Wayne's responsibilities take him far from Gotham, and that's one of the reasons why he's taken such efforts to train Robin and Batgirl. They've come on leaps and bounds, and they're strong enough to be able to handle Gotham without his supervision. And we'll see that in the later seasons when him and Dick Grayson have their falling out and he becomes Nightwing. They're big damn heroes in their own right, like I said earlier on, and this episode proves that.
Yes, and it's a big deal because this is episode 79 of our show.
That's the second time you said issue, by the way. No big deal.
Yeah. Which means that the next one, when we launch into the new Batman Adventures, or Batman the Animated Series Season 3, will be our 80th, which is cause for celebration. Mm-hmm. And obviously fans can now listen to the show as always, but watch us too. But it's weird in a way because even though fans will be able to see us, this is the first time you and I have recorded this show in separate buildings at separate locations. We've always done this. It's the first time we haven't seen each other's reactions while watching the show, and my silliness and my quips. and this is the first time that viewers will be seeing our gorgeous bat-like faces.
It's true. We took a little bit of time out, dear listeners. We needed to reassess some things going on in our lives and our bat caves, and obviously the loss of Kevin Conroy hit home very hard. But crime doesn't take vacations, and neither do we. As a different actor playing Batman once said. So we have returned. We've shaken things up a little bit, but it's still the same Bat time, same Bat channel, giving you the same broken down content on the show that we've all come to know. And I think it's good that we've been able to like start up again on an ending that doesn't really feel very much like the standard episode because of its glaring absence of Batman. We get to see just how big the cast is, how well handled these comics' favorite characters are, and just the kind of stories that can be told with this cast of characters, where the main guy that's sort of in the titles is seen very, very little, but we still get a very rounded, complete story that does these characters justice and is still a fun sight to see.
Oh yeah. Absolutely, but it's really great that this worked out this way in some ways, because watching this episode, obviously, I do believe I've seen it, but I'd completely forgotten it, hence the surprises, and is it Catwoman, is it Joker, who is it, what's going on? This is the last time we will see this iteration visually of Catwoman, Batgirl, Dick Grayson as Robin and Batman. They all completely redesigned for the final season, which shocked me with reading the comics. I thought, whoa, what's going on here? But luckily they did a mini-series in comic form, which I don't know if perhaps you and I should read and cover before we go into season 3, which shows the animated universe origin of Nightwing and what happened when Dick Grayson left the cave. So I don't know. As I've never seen any of the upcoming episodes, not a single one. What do you think?
It may be worth looking into. It would be... I imagine that there'll be some crossover and some tie-ins into the comics, but I don't think there'll be essential viewing. I think there'll be... Because the essential viewing is the show, of course. But they've marketed the comics to those who want to get a little extra piece of Batman adventure goodness. There may be some stuff in there that might make some of the episodes richer, but I hope that, and I'm confident that the creative teams in charge of the show would be able to still tell the rich kinds of stories we've been having so far without needing to rely on any of the details introduced in the comics. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's going to be some crossovers, and that might be a nice thing to catch up on. So I think we can look them over, but I think our focus could still be on the actual show itself.
Yep. Definitely. As you say, the show is essential. You don't need anything else but the show. But with the Batman Adventures comics from the very first run, they do mention the show. So it's more important to watch the show when you read the comics than vice versa. But yeah, it's going to be weird seeing, well, I can't wait to see Nightwing, because you know that after Batman himself, Dick Grayson's my boy. I love him. And my favourite Robin, Tim Drake, although slightly different, almost halfway between the Tim Drake we know and the Jason Todd, because obviously they didn't want to include that story. They've introduced that in the comics in the last 2 or 3 years. So, yeah, big things, big changes. But as for Batgirl Returns, Batgirl steps up, becomes a member of the team as she's going to be moving forward.
Which is always definitely a thing. She was always much a mainline member of the team in this era of comics, this pre-Nightwing sort of time. She's obviously very welcome, and this episode proves that she's a strong presence, headstrong and very fair crime fighter with a good moral code that she probably picked up from Batman, and of course her father, which we get a lot of very fun jokes about. Yeah, it'd be nice to see her around more often.
I'm looking forward to it because, again, Barbara Gordon, you know, I love the character to pieces. So, yeah, it's a fun episode. Roland Daggett being the main villain, out to get Selina. And, of course, he nearly killed her, as alluded to in a previous episode. And this is like her revenge story. And the cat does come out. She's semi-heroic, but still the DC's greatest thief does rear her head, which I'm sure pleased you.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's I was definitely expecting it from this era of Catwoman. To be honest, like I wouldn't put it past her now these days. I think her priority would be caring about her charges first, but if an opportunity like that came up, I think Selena's too streetwise to say no to something like that. But obviously, this Catwoman's much younger and much more in need of worldly wisdom and a bit of heartbreak to have that kind of train of thought. So that's why we see her be very sinister towards Daggett towards the end of the episode, and somewhat double cross our heroes partway through, but still keeps to her code and still plays the anti-heroics that we come to know from Catwoman now, and makes for a well-rounded, layered character, which is kind of what we want. Like, it's very easy to frame her as this just like, this kleptomaniac in a catsuit who just wants all of the shiny things that are cat-related. But no, there's depth there, and that's good storytelling.
Very good story. It's a brilliantly written and beautifully directed episode. I love the way everything's done, from the lighting. Shirley Walker's music in this episode is cinematic, to say the least. But what do you reckon of when they get into the stack deck, that bar full of villains, where it's all shadows, it's all high contrast, like black and white movement, and the villain stepping out of the shadows to confront Catwoman and Catwoman taking him down? Do you not think that visually as well as in audio, this was a cracker?
Yeah, definitely, because the ambience of that bar and how unfortunately they were treated because it was two female crime fighters by like a bunch of like sweaty sailor type dudes was very important. It then led to how they dealt with those guys in a very different way. Batman's fighting style is much more like bombastic and brawling, but they're much more lithe and agile, which is what you'd expect from female combatants such as themselves. So yeah, it got a different visual take that made a lot of sense, and I was very happy to see it, and it was very well handled to see it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that brings me to a really fascinating question, which Selena raises to Barbara. I mean, do you think that Selena's right? Should Babs and Catwoman team up, they would be unstoppable and a handful even for Batman to take down?
But honestly, possibly. I think between Catwoman's ruthlessness and Batgirl's determination, a team like that could get most anything done. It makes me think of some Pet Shop Boy lyrics, but I think I think it'd be a nice dream. It'd be a nice story to tell once, sort of in the same sort of wheelhouse as when Harley and Ivy first met up.
Ooh,
but
yeah.
In actual fact, I don't think it would ever really work out. For this era of Catwoman, she's too self-centered, and Barbara's moral code is too strong. So there would be a lot of friction. That'd be a very interesting story to tell. But then again, I think for that version of the story, we got it in this episode, and it was a wonderful treat to behold.
Yeah, we got a lot in this episode. Action, drama, character, really unlikely team up. Bruce away, leaving Dick and Barbara to go on their own with still a wiser, more mature, more experienced member of the Bat family with them, but one that they would normally work with, especially in this era. So it was a fascinating episode to watch. And as such, what were your main takeaways from Batgirl Returns, good, bad, or ugly this week?
Well, I had quite a few. I wanted to sort of, like we unpacked a little bit how unfairly they were treated for being women going into a male-dominated bar like that. I particularly love the consistency of the show as a whole, being able to call back to those other characters with confidence and say that there's no Batman here, but we can still tell a story, and the Daggett connection. But I think my biggest takeaway was how proud I was as a viewer of Robin and Batgirl, because sure, there was no Batman in this episode, but he wasn't needed. He has trained those two up so well that they are real heroes in their own right, and they're very welcome to be the main characters in this show and in this story. And yeah, it was weird to feel pride for like literal cartoon characters, but they mean a lot to me because they're characters I've grown up with in multiple media. So seeing them as strong, confident, and like capable heroes on their own was like very impressive, and I'm proud and happy to see it.
Yeah, I agree. with Barbara and Dick Grayson, the fact that they grew up with me. I read the comics when I saw them make that leap from teenagers to going to university or college, as they call it in the States, to progressing to be their own heroes in their own cities or their own parts of Gotham, fighting crime themselves, and seeing that slowly start to happen in this show as well. A lot of pride here. But I did have one takeaway, which is the first ever from this show, which I wasn't that happy with, even though I knew it was coming, because it's been in the cards, and they make it even worse in the extremely hit and miss Killing Joke animated adaptation. Is the fact that, yes, even in the comics at the beginning, Batgirl became Batgirl out of hero worship for Batman, but the fact that she also has a romantic interest in him, I just find cringy, because he's got to be a good 10, 15 years older than her, part one, and B, as you know, I'm a hopeless romantic. For me, it's Stick and Babs forever. It's Batgirl and Nightwing. I want those, and that seems to be happening in Nightwing's title and in the Batgirl's title at the moment. But that was the only negative ever. But it was a different era, and Dick and Babs weren't really a couple back in the 90s as much as they are now. So different era, different writers telling different stories, I guess.
I think so. I didn't want to have to touch on the Killing Joke adaptation, because there's a trend on YouTube where like video starts at, and you can skip out to the actual content and skip over the introduction. In my head, the Killing Joke animation starts at like minute 44.
Yeah, agreed.
Killing Joke starts at minute 44, so I largely discredit that opening salvo. It didn't really happen in my head, so the fact that they've sort of played again on those themes is a little weird. But again, I'm choosing to ignore it because the Killing Joke thing didn't exist. But also, I'm imagining this as like Barbara Gordon, like fresh out of Superhero Academy. She's like 12 minutes on the scene, so she's still going to have a little bit of like teenage girl hormones of looking at this big, strong, capable man and just like, ooh. But after a while, she'll calm down a little bit, and she'll see the goodness in a boy more her age and of a similar skill level and similar wavelength. So I have confidence in your one true pairing as well. So yeah, it's a little bit glaring. It's a little bit icky almost, but it's one I'm willing to ignore when you put a little bit of logic to it.
Yeah, indeed. And again, we all know we can't control our dreams. And like you said, at that age, seeing the hero and knowing that that is the real reason she started being Batgirl in the first place, I can forgive it, because everything else about this episode, honestly, was terrific. So good.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So in terms of actors, obviously we know Kevin Conroy, Lauren Lester, Melissa Gilbert, Adrienne Barbeau, regulars. But let's quickly talk about the chemist, played by an actor called Scott Valentine. And his story is one that's going to make you sit up and go, what, really? Trained as an actor from a very young age. And just as his career was starting to take off, he was hit, run over and dragged by a truck. Which almost killed him. It took him 3 years to come back. But in true heroic fashion, after that, well, you can't see any 90s TV without finding him in it. From Knight Rider to Perry Mason to Murder, She Wrote to CSI to Mike Hammer. He appeared in 17 movies. He appears in 2 episodes prior to this of Batman the Animated Series as, believe it or not, Roland Daggett's sidekick with the headphones. Do you remember him?
Oh, the spy guy, the guy who's in charge of security.
Yep, same actor, Scott Valentine, and he'll appear in 2 episodes of Superman the Animated Series, and he'll appear again in an episode of Batman Beyond. So let's look out for Scott Valentine there. But glad he's still with us after being hit, run over, and dragged by a truck. So Scott Valentine, wow, superhero origin story right there.
Yeah, definitely. It's very fortunate that he was able to make it. But good work to him. And obviously, again, a great performance, because this voice and this character were very different from Headphones Friend.
Oh, yeah.
This guy has like snivelly, cowardly, intellectual, and Starscream almost energy. So, yeah, great performance and great variation. I'm glad that he's okay and was able to give us many different performances across many different flavors of Batman.
Yeah, 3 episodes of Batman the Animated Series. The chemist in this one and Raymond Bell in the 2 episodes Feet of Clay Parts 1 and 2, also featuring Roland Daggett. Well, that brings us to the end of episode 79 of I Am the Night. So, as always, we'll sign off, and this time viewers can see us, and we can see each other, which is great because we didn't watch it together on the sofa like we used to do. But the fact the show's back just makes me really happy.
Most definitely, and you will expect to see us coming back to you much more regularly, dear listener. We've made the plans and the efforts to start talking about the show again. Though the distances may be great, it will still be the same level of fine-tooth comb analysis of what is already a timeless classic of Batman media.
And as we've both said, audio justice.
Audio justice.
It's back, and it's back to stay. So, till next time, Adam, let's tell Gothamites where they can hear your dulcet tones and read your work.
I have much work out there on the fine winder interwebs. You can summon it by calling the bat signal, I wish. To hear my dulcet tones, you can, of course, hear me on this show and back issues and back episodes of I Am the Night podcast. You can also hear me on my own podcast hosted through the Fantastic Universes podcast network called Fantastic Plays, where a friend and I talk about everything going on in the world of gaming, PC, console, tabletop, and everything in between. Most of our episodes these days is with a dear friend, Connor McEnderwar, talking about the state of the many different collectible card games we play. As for my written work for Batman flavored things, look no further than Dark Knight News. You can find my reviews of Catwoman and the current ongoing Mark Silvestri title Batman and the Joker Deadly Duo, which is excellent right now. For my own true love, PC and tabletop gaming, look to our website, fantasticuniverses.com, where I post many blog posts and thought pieces on whatever gaming topic takes my fancy. Look to the Storyteller's Forge, where I write story GM tips and storyteller tips to help level up your TTRPG experience. And look to twitch.tv/IsItTinkerer, where I'm going to finally make the efforts, once I get over my day job's new sleep schedule, to broadcast myself playing various different digital card games, be it Magic Arena, Legends of Runeterra, or Marvel Snap. I hate to reference Marvel on a DC show, but that is the way of things.
We love both. No harm.
Follow me on Twitter @IsItTinkerer, and find all of those social medias at more@linktree.com/IsItTinkerer.
Marvelous. As for myself, just type Steve J. Ray or Fantastic Universes into your search engine of choice. That'll take you to all my news, reviews, features, and interviews across DC Comics News, our sister sites, Dark Knight News, the more Batman-focused website, and Fantastic Universes, which is for everything fan-related. And talk to me on Twitter @LStevo, EL_STEEVO. As for this show and the main DC Comics News podcast, the soon-to-be returning Harley Quinn cast, Mad Love, and maybe even the Spinner Rack. I don't know what's happening. And if we can twist Brad's arm, we need Filicky Fashions talking about costume designs and everything else. Catch those on the DC Comics News Podcast Network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, and wherever else you find your podcasts. You can catch DC Comics News and Dark Knight News on Twitter and the rest of social medias at DC Comics News, altogether, no spaces, at DKNews.com on Twitter for Dark Knight News, and darknightnews.com online. Catch us there. We'll love to hear from you. Please talk to us. Let us know if you're happy about the return of I Am the Night, and this will be a regular thing again moving forward. But until it is, well, we have only a few more things left to tell you.
I am the night.
We are the night.
And this has been the I Am the Night podcast. Thank you for listening, and until next time,
read
more
comics
and watch
more
Batman.